And we invited you here today for two reasons. One, to inform you of a new project that we have coming up, and another, to ask for your prayers and your help. Today, we just want to inform you of what we're doing and why the need is there for the project that we have. I just want to emphasize there's no pressure on you. We're not asking you for anything right now. We're asking you to simply listen and ask questions. Okay? So over the past couple of years, I've been here for a year and a half, but over the past several years that Father John Del Fiore and the Society of Priests have been in this area and working with the Catholic Newman community here, they noticed a trend. The trend was, there was two trends. One is that they would have certain students here for a few months or maybe a semester, and then the students would leave. And they would ask them, well, why are you going? Because they were very involved here at the Newman community and were attending Mass daily and things of that nature. And the students' response was, I just can't handle it here in the dorm, and I can't do this here. They were so uncomfortable with the anti-Catholic behavior, the things that the professors were saying, the life in the dorms just clinched it for them. And they left. And the majority of the students we found that leave UW-Blackwell go to Catholic University. They transfer to Catholic University. Okay. The other side of it was that, as Father John told the other day, we've had students come in here in the middle of the night looking for a place to sleep on one of our couches because they could not handle being in the dorms. The things that were happening there, we have children in the room, so the things that were happening in the dorms made them so uncomfortable, and they just knew that they couldn't stay there as an act of condoning it if they stood around there. And they physically had to leave themselves, and they came here as a safe refuge for that. Father John and I and Mark, my youth over here, will be presenting in a moment, sat down and talked about that and said, what can we do to help them? And one of the things was to do a living and learning community, to rent out houses around Platteville and have some of the students, live there, girls in one house, guys in another house, and help them spiritually, but also really bring them out of that dorm situation. And we started that last year, and actually two of the women that just went to chaperone the kids watching the movie are in that Catholic LLC that is over 2 streets over. The boys' LLC will open this coming semester. We've noticed that it brings students together, it makes them more involved. They are very active here, but they're also more active in their own spiritual life. This need has become so great, as you'll learn from Mark Mayu, that we went to the diocese and we said, we want to buy the houses that are nearby us, that are next door to us, so that we don't have to worry about renting these, these houses, because the girls literally signed the lease and then they agreed to adhere by our bylaws for the LLC. They're the ones paying the lease, they're the ones who rented the house, but they agree to do this. Which is a lot. They could just rent a house by themselves and not have anything to do with it, but they prefer to do it this way. So we went to the diocese, and at the beginning, the diocese, after slaving over, a 30, 40-page report on how this would work, the diocese said, no, I don't know if this is the best thing to do right now. You're a church. A few weeks later, they came back, and they had talked to their building committee, and building committee, this is a fantastic idea. This is something they should definitely do. So Mark and I went into a meeting with Kofi, this is John Kofi over here, and about 7 or 8 other people from the diocese and Monsignor Bartilla, and presented us with a basic blueprint of what it could look like, and it blew our minds. They showed this whole building being St. Augustine property and building a dorm for the students, for almost 200 students, and building a new Catholic center and a new chapel. This is now our dream that is coming to fruition. So the need is there. The students need this, and the students have been surveyed and they want something like this. But I am going to pass it over to Mark, as I'm the emotional one, not the statistical one. pass it over to our genius on hand to give you more information, surveys and studies and research that I've done, some concrete evidence that this is something that is needed here and in many other places.
Yeah, my name is Mark Mayu, and just by way of introduction, for 8 years I was director of institutional research at UW Platteville. Recently, though, I've taken a new job about 2 months ago. I'm now in continuing education, outreach, and e-learning. I've got about 17 years of experience in higher education. I'm also the development assistant here at St. Augustine. What I want to do today is give you a little context on the situation in colleges and universities in general. So it's not a national level. And drill down specifically to UW Platteville and here at St. Augustine. In 2012, the National Center for Education Statistics reported that there were 4,829 colleges and universities spread throughout the United States. That's a lot of institutions of higher learning. And they have been busy educating students. In the middle of the 20th century, 1950s or so, 5% of the adult population, that's people aged 25 and older, had a bachelor's degree. 50 years later, that number is at 30%, and it's growing. It has now become the expectation. As a matter of fact, the new glass ceiling, people familiar with the term, the glass ceiling, used to be a term attributed to women in the workplace. They couldn't advance to higher positions. There was a glass ceiling because of their gender. They couldn't progress to higher positions. Now that's being applied to anyone without a college degree. In fact, I was at a focus group recently in Madison. These people who did not have a degree. And that's precisely what their chief complaint. They cannot progress without that piece of paper. So it's a great pressure on society. The college industry is booming. So in order to, and the influence is growing. So whenever you look at college students, look across the street, or students in the living and learning community, you're looking at the future leaders. You're looking at tomorrow's decision makers, tomorrow's policy makers, tomorrow's law makers. You're looking at the leaders of just about every industry out there. Healthcare, media, entertainment, business, even the church. These are your future leaders. These are the people that will be influencing society. So make no mistake, if you had to choose one industry, one entity or organization that exists in the United States right now that can and will influence the culture at large in a dramatic way, it is higher education. As a matter of fact, look at it in a spiritual sense. If C.S. Lewis were writing today, if he were alive and writing today, he was rewriting screw-tape letters, he would not be setting it in World War II Europe. I speculate that he probably was setting it on an American college campus today. The first letter would begin with, "Dear Wormwood, pack your suitcase, you're going to college. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape." And this is a spiritual battle that's going on. I'll give you a little evidence of that. 2005 study by the Carnegie Foundation showed that 72% of faculty identified themselves as liberal. Over 50% of them rarely or never go to church. In 1984, that same survey showed that 39% identified themselves as liberal. It's a dramatic increase in a very short period of time. Pause and think about that for a minute. 39% to 72%. A huge increase. I would say that it's not just human influence there. This is a spiritual battle. That's a demonic influence there. This has an effect. That 2005 Carnegie study also showed that 84% of faculty are in favor of abortion. 67% believe that homosexuality is acceptable. So if you see that same-sex marriage seems to be a runaway train. Here's some explanation of why that is. Again, colleges and universities are influencing the culture. They're the engine behind future decision makers, future voters, the future policy makers. So when your faculty hold that kind of view in mass, it should be no surprise that it seeps into the curriculum. It becomes part of the very air, the atmosphere of higher education. So students end up facing a lot of difficulties, not just overt anti-Catholicism. I'll get into that in a moment. We get evidence that that's happening. That you don't have to look too far. But there's all sorts of ideologies that are being trumpeted on campus as truths. I call them an army of isms that being taught as basically dogma. And all of these isms are firmly arrayed against the church. And they're firmly meant to draw people away from God. Again, this is a spiritual battle. There's all relativism, utilitarianism, reductive materialism, evolutionism. These are theories that, again, draw people away from God. There's theories on campus that say you get to select your own gender. You can change it every day if you want. One day male, next day female. Up to you to decide. Not up to God to decide, but up to you. And to speak against this brings quite a bit of difficulty on campus. You will be labeled a hater. If you are faculty or staff, it will impact your career. If you are a student, you will be quickly silenced by the majority and persecuted. So these are tough times for students on campus. Now, students are being affected. We're not churning out at colleges and universities a bunch of atheists, but they are being influenced. A study in the Review of Religious Research, this is a 2011 study, it was a national survey, a very robust study, showed that students who graduate with a reduced belief in the Bible, they see it as like any other book. That, the Quran, Hindu, holy book, all the same. So it pretty much waters down one's belief in the Bible. Students also graduate less likely to believe that there is one true faith. And students are more likely to convert to a mainline Protestant denomination. So they're still graduating with spirituality, just one that's not compatible with Catholicism. So that's the bad news. The good news is that we can do something about it. Envision colleges and universities in America today as, the way I like to view it as, is like Oz, France, pre-John Vianney. That was a tough time. It seemed like an impossible case. You know, secularism had just run rampant. It seemed like the church was dead. And then in comes this humble parish priest, with the power of the church, the power of the sacraments. Everything was transformed. The conversions were spectacular. People lining up for confession. They had to build a train railway system into Oz, France to bring the pilgrims. So view university as exactly that. Oz, France, pre-John Vianney. And the interest is out there among students. Students are indeed interested in deepening their faiths. We did in 2013, we did a survey of all registered students here at St. Augustine, and we found the following. What I'm going to be quoting is the percentage of students who agree or strongly agree with the following statements. So 71% agreed or strongly agreed that spiritual development is an integral part of the college experience. 83% of the students surveyed strongly agreed or agreed that spiritual development is a critical part of their overall well-being. 87% of students strongly agreed or agreed that faith and traditions of their parents are an important part of who they are as a person. 84% of students strongly agree or agree with the statement that their faith, religion, contributes to their ability to cope with struggles and challenges of life as a college student. So, folks have that natural spiritual radar, no matter what Screwtape and Wormwood are up to. They can't quash the natural human instinct to seek God. Students have that within them. It couldn't be crushed in Oz, France, even though the rampant secularism had taken over. It can't be crushed here. But students are experiencing difficulty. Two-fifths of students, so over two-fifths of students, are experiencing the following. So they're stating that they agree or strongly agree that they've experienced that the Catholic Church's stances on current events and issues were labeled as a form of injustice. That's pretty common. If you are pro-marriage, you are seen as espousing an unjust stance. 41% agreed or strongly agreed that they were exposed to anti-Catholic speech and/or materials on campus. The same percentage, 41%, agreed or strongly agreed that they were exposed to events that directly contradicted their Catholic faith. So folks are experiencing, we have statistical evidence, that they're having a hard time on campus. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence as well. Last fall 2013, UW Platteville got its first ever pro-life group promoting the gift of life. They did a simple, very beautiful event on campus, a sidewalk chalk campaign, where they put very positive pro-life messages. Thank your mother and father for life. Life is beautiful. The very next day, someone had come in the dark of night and written counter messages right next to positive messages. Again, the small children here, I'll simply say that they were vulgar and rather pornographic. They were startling in their shock value. The newspaper, the student newspaper, responded to this by stating that the pro-life event occurred, some counter messages were written, then they gave a list of students that they interviewed, and not a single student was in favor of pro-life messages. Of all the people that they interviewed, they couldn't find one. Weeks later, they came out with another attack on them. So this is an example of the difficulty that students experience on campus. And a lot of anecdotal evidence. I had experienced it myself. In fact, I would say one of the very reasons I am no longer director of institutional research at this institution is because of my overt Catholicism. I spelled the end of my career. So the difficulty is there, but the anecdote is here. And if we can be so bold as to live up to our vocations, whether as a religious or as a lay, is to save souls. If we can do that by using our talents, by applying them right here locally at St. Augustine, and God willing, making this vision come true, we can influence not only our local area, but really the wider region. And what we do here, we will see the fruits of in heaven someday. So thank you for your time, for listening. Again.
My name is John Covey, Covey Real Estate Partners. My business partner, Kevin Page, and I have been working on this project for about the last 6 months. We were introduced to Father and Carly and Mark at that time, really because they had this great idea, and at the same time, we were working on another project in Diocese Madison to actually convert an old school building for the Cathedral Parish into student housing at UW-Madison. That building will actually be completed this August, and we'll have about 66 students that will move into the project. First year will probably be about 65% Catholic students, and it will be a great community that will just continue to grow. year is always, it's always a little bit tougher just because of buildings under construction. And I think that St. Paul's there will actually probably be 100% Catholic students by the time that we get to the second or third year of leasing the building. So it's a neat project to be involved in, and I think it is very similar to the project that we're talking about here. The reason we were brought into this is our company does real estate development, and we try to add some process and the boring stuff, looking at the numbers and all those types of things, but to make sure that the project is going to be successful. So when we first met with Father John, we said the first thing that you really need to do in looking at this project is to do a market study. So we brought in Baker Tilly, an accounting firm. They do market studies for different types of housing all across the country. They did the market study for the Platteville student rental market for us, and they looked at about 600 different units here in Platteville. It's a very, as you know, it's a very strong student housing market. The market overall is about 7% vacant, and the need for good, high-quality housing is extremely high. The two comparables that are most similar to this, there isn't a lot of new product in Platteville, so the two that are most comparable would be Washington Place and then Fox Ridge. And of those two, there's zero vacancy in either of them. And it's really something that we see in student housing across the country right now. If there is a newer product based on what the students need, it will be 100% leased. And you're really just seeing that if you can provide, for students right now, the biggest things, and I think the whole faith part of it is just a great aspect to it. But what students and their parents are looking for is safe, secure, and modern facilities. So that's in the project that we're working on in Madison, as well as this project. Safety and security and just kind of being modern and clean are just things that are so important to students and their parents. So after we did the market study, we found that yes, there's definitely a need here. And then we looked at the numbers at what rent is on comparable properties, as well as the entire market, and then started to build a model, financial model that says, all right, is this project feasible? At that point, we also brought